Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Mike Mantione. Mike's the guitar player, singer, and songwriter with the band 5/8. I've been in the band 5/8 off and on for about 30 years. I've known Mike for a really long time. He's got an amazing story, and I'm really glad he was able to come and do a talk. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who've survived anxiety, depression, addiction, and abuse. My idea was that if we could see our sufferings and the sufferings of others, we could start to have honest conversations about what it was like, what happened, and what things are like now, and how we can get better. I am a working musician. As I mentioned, I play drums on the rock band 5/8. 5/8 has a show coming up Saturday, October 26th. That's part of the enormous Halloween festival in Athens called the Wild Rumpus. We're playing at the Caledonia Lounge. We're playing with the amazing Athens band Monsoon. But don't wait until Saturday to come to Athens if you're coming for the Wild Rumpus. There's events all week. You can check it out online. There's a full schedule of events and a listing of everything that's happening at wildrumpus.org. That's WILDRUMPUS.org. The week of Halloween is the most Athens week in Athens all year. So come on, it's going to be a big time. Regular listeners will know I've just come off tour. I was out on the road with Mike Mills, Robert McDuffie, and Chuck Leavell from the Rolling Stones. Robert McDuffie is one of the premier concert violinists in the world. Of course, Mike Mills is the bass player of REM. We were out on the A Night of Georgia Music tour. That tour was a great time. It was a little stressful, though. I'm not going to lie. It's good to be home and have some time with family and to just rest for a bit. The only show I have on the books right now is that one at the Caledonia in October. So come see 5/8 and have a good time. Oh, hey, here's some big news. T-shirts are available for pre-order. If you go to crashandridepodcast.com, the website is 90% done. I've got almost all the old episodes uploaded, and you can listen to them there. But you can go to the store link on the website, and you can order shirts. Shirts will be ready to ship on the 21st of October. You can also order the Crash and Ride Espresso there, and I'll ship that pretty much as soon as I get your order. There's women's sizes in black. There's men's sizes in black and blue in shirts, and they have the Loud Guitars Save Lives logo on them. Pretty stoked about that, so you can pre-order now if you want. Here's a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based in Athens, Georgia. They have a special espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride whole beans in cans at most of their retail locations, or you can order it from the website, crashandridepodcast.com, or you can order it from Jittery Joe's website at jitteryjoes.com. If you want to try before you buy, you can get Crash and Ride Espresso and drinks at Hendershot's Coffee Shop, a musician-owned and operated coffee shop just steps away from the University of Georgia campus. It's run by a really cool guy named Seth. I just saw Seth the other night, and we had a really nice talk. He runs a really good coffee shop. He's a great drummer. He's a great guy. It's worth every penny of your money to go get coffee at Hendershot's Coffee. Later this fall, I'm doing a live episode of Crash and Ride at Hendershot's where I'm going to talk to Bob Sleppy, the director of Nucci Space. Nucci Space is a non-profit musicians resource based here in Athens, Georgia. And when I say musicians resource, I mean they offer a mind-boggling array of services to musicians in the Athens area. Their primary mission is to provide referrals and subsidies for musicians in crisis who are struggling with anxiety or depression to see a counselor for a very affordable fee. The last time I did it, it was like $15 an hour, which is unheard of. The way that they finance that is they have very affordable rehearsal spaces that you can rent hourly. They have a recording studio where they train young people to be recording engineers, and that's deeply discounted for Athens musicians. They also have a live performance space there and a coffee bar. There's like a used gear sale that runs anytime the doors are open. You can walk in and check out like outboard gear for your studio or sets of drums or amplifiers or all kinds of like musical accessories, and they're very affordably priced. I mean, Nucci Space is it's part of the fabric of the lives of the musicians who live in Athens, Georgia, and we're all deeply grateful that it's here. And because it is a 501c3, if you're one of those people who's fortunate enough to have some tax liability you want to offset, any donations you make to Nucci Space are tax deductible. Go to nuci.org, that's nucci.org for more information, or call 706-227-1515. Speaking of nonprofits that I wholeheartedly support, if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, if you need someone to talk to, if you're contemplating self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help you through your crisis. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255 or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you're a trans person struggling with anxiety, depression, gender dysphoria, you need a peer to talk to, the Trans Lifeline's peer support line is 1-877-565-8860 or go to translifeline.org. All right, this week's episode, Mike Mantione, a guy I've toured the world with. We've been all over the country. We've played thousands, literally thousands of shows together, all over the United States, Canada. We've been to India together. When I met Mike, we were both newly sober. I went back out. He didn't. He was very open with me and very open in his songwriting about his struggles with anxiety and depression. And, I think that the story of Mike's journey, his mental health struggles, it's written large across all of the 5/8 records. And I think that's part of why some people love the band, because Mike has always unflinchingly written about what exactly he was going through. This week, after the sort of stressful tour that was so great, but was also, it's kind of stressful, I really wanted to have someone in I could really connect with and have a good rapport with, and somebody I loved, and Mike was the perfect candidate. So I called him and I said, "Hey, buddy, it's your turn in the barrel." So he came by, and it was in the middle of the week, and you can hear the dogs barking in the background. Dogs are jumping all over him while he was talking. We had a really good talk. I had to bleep out his home address. If you're wondering why, at the very last few minutes of the interview, there's a bit that's taken out. Mike was just so relaxed. And I was like, "Where's home, man?" And he gave me the address. I don't want the entire world to be sending pizzas to Mike's house. So yeah, let's jump into our interview with Mike Mantione. All right, I'm here with Mike Mantione, guitar player, singer, songwriter of the band 5/8, also now of the super secret band The Bad Ends, which you'll be hearing a lot about, I think, in the coming months. Mike and I have played music together now over 20 years. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Patrick. How you doing?
This is a question that I've been wanting to ask you forever.
Excellent.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
You cussed.
Well, I'm allowed to. It's my podcast. No, seriously, it's great to have Mike here. Mike and I have played music together now well over 20 years. We're going to be coming up on 30 years at this point.
Over 30 years, Patrick.
That's insane. It's insane. We have traveled the world together. We have been all over the United States, Canada, and now India.
Yes.
And we have learned a lot about ourselves and each other, and it's great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here.
I guess we should probably start at the beginning. You're from Long Island, right? Were you born in Long Island or born in Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your dad worked for New York Telephone, New York Bell, right?
Yep, New York Telephone Company.
How long did you guys live in Brooklyn before you moved to Long Island?
So I was born in Brooklyn, but they had really already moved to Long Island in a sense. They had a house that was being built. I was born, and then they moved in there. So I never really lived in the Brooklyn apartment, although I heard about the flood that destroyed a lot of pictures and stuff.
Tell me about the flood.
Evidently, it was an apartment in Brooklyn that got flooded, and they lived in the basement apartment, of a brownstone, and it was destroyed.
What they now call a garden apartment.
That's right.
Yeah,
and it was clobbered, and I guess boxes of photos and records and whatnot were all floating around. So we lost quite a bit of family memorabilia.
When did your family get to the U.S.?
Well, my father's side his father came over the boat and was not born in New York. So and part of his family, the Mantiones, I think there were 13 of them. They lived in part of them lived in Italy, Sicily to be precise, and then the rest, 3 of them came over. His brother and his brother's sister came over to America. So Frank and my aunt, who I only met a couple of times, and right now her name is escaping me, but they came over together, and I never met my father's father. He died when he was my dad was 15.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and they had kind of a tough relationship, as it were.
So your father's father, born in Italy, born in Sicily, came to the U.S. and where was that the apartment that they were living in that flooded? Is that your family's apartment, or did your dad?
That was my dad and my mom.
Yeah.
When after they got married, they got an apartment in Brooklyn for a little bit, and then they found a house on Long Island.
Deer Park, Dix Hills, right?
That's right, Dix Hills. Well, in that point, it was Comac. So they changed Comac to Dix Hills because it was too big, and they started breaking it up.
Is Comac short for something?
You know what? I can tell you, it's definitely some kind of Indian name, American Indian. Yeah. So a lot of the area was like Iroquois. The Indian presence was very strong there, and there was farmland, and so it was probably some sort of farming village at one point. But I'm not really a history buff. But the one thing about our town that was interesting is that our subdivision had its own school, Southridge Elementary School. And
But you went to Catholic school, though, right?
Not till high school.
Oh, okay.
So just high school. Elementary school, I was in Southridge, and I could walk to the elementary school. It was about a mile away from the house, maybe a little more. And we walked every day.
Do you know what your grandfather died of?
Mm-hmm. He died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
He had a complete heart attack. He was age 42. He was a patent attorney.
42?
Yeah.
So young.
Yeah, he was just starting to make some serious money. He had lost everything in the stock crop, Margaret Pratt, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as an attorney, he had just really he was a patent attorney, so he had patented one of IBM's key
typewriter?
It wasn't a typewriter. It was a card key.
Card punch for early computer programming.
Yeah, that's right. Way early. Manhattan Project related.
Oh,
patent.
wow.
Yeah, so he was all over that stuff. He had gone to Albany and Syracuse during that time frame, came back and was like, hey, I think this is going to be good. And then it wasn't so good. He had a heart attack. And he was thin as a rail.
Yeah.
Just a toothpick.
Was there heart disease in your family?
Yes.
Is that why? So Mike in the last few years has gone vegan and is running...
Vegan light.
Vegan light?
Vegan light.
You're vegan-ish?
I'm vegan-ish. I'm vegan when I can do it.
Yeah.
And then, I think there might have been some cheese on my veggie burger last night that I didn't just toss.
Yeah.
I believe I might have sipped a little bit of Freddy's custard.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
You can see where this is going.
Yeah. But I mean,
I'm like a close approximation of a very annoying person in line. I will absolutely ask for the vegan at the restaurant.
Right.
Just to see what happens.
Right.
And it happens.
Well, but you look 20 years younger than you did 5 years ago.
This is true.
Because you're running now and doing a lot of self-care.
I am.
So you got heart disease in your family, stress in your family.
Yep.
Alcoholism in your family.
Yep. All the good stuff.
Yeah.
Anxiety disorder, free-floating anxiety disorder, depression, mental illness, all the good stuff. I think it's just life issues that kind of come home to roost. Right. And, I think when you ask what's wrong with you, it's such a great thing because I used to think of myself as, mentally ill, or I'm an addict, or neurotic. When I was before I really got mentally ill,
Right.
I don't really think of in terms of those kinds of labels anymore. I just find that they're just a little too labely, as it were. We love to label stuff. We love to have scientific experiments.
Yeah, put things in boxes.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So we can think about it in a way that helps us maybe cut back on the anxiety of being, of feeling.
But you think that there's more just a generalized like inability to cope with life on life's terms?
Yeah, it took me a long time to feel grateful for where I was and to live it where I was in the moment. Took a long, long time.
So your grandpa is this really high achiever. He's early computer programmer, potentially working to beat fascism on the Manhattan Project.
That's right.
But dies of stress probably at 42. Your dad, who I was fortunate enough to know, was a musician, but he put it away to focus on more serious things.
That's right.
And he suffered his whole life for that. And my impression was that he missed it terribly.
Yeah, I used to, when I first was a teenager, it used to drive me crazy because he could improvise on the saxophone. So he was such an incredible improviser. And, you know, you could put him next to my uncle who played in the New York Philharmonic and was Juilliard trained and traveled the world, had played with Chet Baker. And, you know, he started off as a heroin addict. And
wait, your uncle was a heroin addict?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And he somehow got rid of it and just became a one-drink drinker.
Oh,
and, and became, he went from jazz to classical music.
Right.
And in that transition, you know, studied philosophy and religion and became a brilliant musician, but he could not improvise like my father could.
Yeah.
Not even, it wasn't even
I mean, the only way you get
possible.
to the point where you're that free with improvisation is just by practicing relentlessly.
Yeah. My dad played in a lot of bands through high school.
Yeah.
He was, and then that's how he got into college. He got into Manhattan College because he was a saxophonist and clarinetist. He played both equally well. And so, you know, when I picked up the guitar, I would like try and jam with him, and we had some great jams.
How old were you then?
15 when I started playing music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a little while. There was a piano in the house, but we didn't get piano lessons, which was odd. My mother would play piano for us, and she would play two-handed piano and go, "You see, this is how you play piano." And I'd be like, "Wow, I'd love to play piano." And that was it. That was as far as it got.
Yeah.
No one said, "Do you want piano lessons?"
Yeah.
No. I mean, this piano sat in this house.
Yeah.
And me and my sister would bang on it all the time.
Right.
And nobody got lessons. And they said I was super talented. They would have me sing for them all the time. I performed for all the relatives.
Right. But no lessons.
Yeah, there was no lesson. I didn't even get a guitar. The only reason I got a guitar was because my sister got a guitar. And when she got a guitar, I was like, wait a minute, what is going on?
The younger sister.
My younger sister, 2 years younger than me, Liz, she gets this guitar one Christmas. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How is that happening? And I was like, they don't understand what's going on here. I'm the musician.
Right.
So I made my mom get me a guitar. It was like a Sears
different guitar. You didn't get your sister's guitar.
No.
Yeah.
I got a Sears guitar. It was even worse than hers. I don't remember what hers was.
Acoustic? Electric?
Yeah, acoustic.
Yeah.
And I immediately started telling everybody I knew that I played guitar. And so people would come over to the house, and I would pull out this guitar, and I'd go, I can play guitar. And all my friends would look at me and go, that's awesome. And then I would put it away. I couldn't play yet, but I told them I did. I knew enough.
Yeah.
I was going to rope myself into this one.
Yeah. Just create enough.
Just lie enough so
Pure
that I had
expectation.
to. That's right. And then I remember the first time I took it on the bus with me because I could just about play a Black Sabbath song. It was, it was like...
was it Iron Man?
No,
that was the first one I learned.
Paranoid. It was Sweet Leaf.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And,
man. That's a little more challenging than Iron Man.
Yeah, I couldn't play it.
Okay.
I mean, one string.
Right.
I played one string. That was it. And I realized that nobody in high school could play guitar because they all looked at me and said, "Holy cow, Mont," because that's what they called me. They called me Mont.
I never heard that.
Yeah, they called me Mont. They were like, that's amazing. You're playing guitar. And I thought, oh my God, I'm playing guitar.
Right.
And that's when I started practicing about 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yeah. When you realize that there's actual like social, like,
because I had nothing, right?
Right.
I was a complete pathological liar.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that. Yeah.
Did I just jump over like 20 years?
When you realize that there's like social currency in being a musician, which I think is less now because, it's not as cool to be in a rock band as it was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago when we were kids. I think Creed ruined rock bands for everybody. Like, Creed's just so bad. You're like, you're in a rock band? Like Creed?
Poor Creed.
Were you anxious as a kid? Did you have like... When do you remember realizing that maybe things weren't fully like right or normal?
I mean, it had to be sometime around 11 years old, because up until that point, I was completely crazy. Like I can look back now and go, holy God, what a mess.
Right.
But at the time, it's all you know. So you're fine.
Right.
I mean, you're telling lies to your best friends who live next door to you every day.
Right.
You're telling them I saw the show last night. Now I wasn't allowed to watch TV after 7:30. Once Star Trek turned off, that was it.
Right.
We were up in bed, and everyone else was watching all these wrestling, championship wrestling, or whatever they were watching. And I was like, yeah, I watched that show, and they were all going, no, you didn't, Mont. You didn't watch anything. And I'm like, no, I did. And then I would make up something, and they would all look at me and go, you didn't watch the show. And then they'd usually punch me or something, and I wouldn't say anything. I would just keep lying.
Right.
So I didn't know there was anything wrong with that. I would come home. One time I came home from school, and my mom said, how was school? And I said, well, it was great. And then I looked at her and I said, except for the fire. And she's like, there was a fire? And I was like, oh yeah, there was a fire. And she's like, what happened? I didn't hear anything about it. I said, well, the stage curtain started burning. And she was like, oh my gosh. So she started calling up people. And then she came back. I was up in my room doing something else. I don't remember what I was doing in my room. And she came back up and she said, there wasn't any fire. I said, sure there was. She said, no. And then everything goes black. I don't really remember what happened after that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where things just go black. Stuff's going on. And
it's a good childhood when there's just chunks that are missing.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
I have like incredible visual memories of everything. I could walk through my house. I know where lint is in my house.
The house you grew up in.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Your mom still have the house? No, she sold the house.
They sold the house. It's gone. But it's up here. It's right up in the old noggin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but there are just parts of my childhood
just gone.
Just gone.
Yeah.
The static channel turns on.
Right. The 18
There
minutes.
might be some voices in the background. No, God,
right.
no.
18 minutes of the Watergate tape.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like Mr. Bill,
Oh,
No.
Man, there are people who are not going to get that reference.
I know. But Mr. Bill was like that claymation guy in Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, who was always just constantly being destroyed.
He was getting destroyed. That was me.
Yeah.
I was Mr. Bill. When I first saw that, I cried and laughed so hard. I was like, finally, there I am.
Representation matters, right?
Thank gosh.
Yeah. So you have this somewhat turbulent childhood. Your dad's working at New York Bell, right?
Yeah.
Commuting into the city every day?
Every day commutes to the city.
Was the PATH train then or something else?
Long Island Railroad.
Yeah.
So it's the Long Island Railroad every day, 5 days a week, and then you're home on the weekends.
Right.
And he was like, my dad was like, everybody in our family was very demonstrative of affection.
Right.
We all knew we loved each other. There was 3 of us. In my early times, when I'm 11, my brother's really just born. So, maybe he's 2 years old. And that's really a pivotal time for me. That's when everything just starts falling apart.
Yeah. Your brother's 2 years old.
Right around 2. And
how old are you at this point? 7
I'm
or
11.
8? Oh,
yeah. So I'm 9 years older than my brother.
Thomas, your brother.
Yeah, Thomas. By the time I'm 13, I'm so screwed up. I'm a walking poster child for alcoholic. I'm just like if you put any kind of drug near me, I was ready to experience feelings that weren't just
anxiety,
yeah. And like hunkered down. What's going to go? What's happening here?
Yeah.
How am I going to get out of this one?
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was in years later, I was in therapy for my first marriage as it collapsed. I was sitting next to my ex-wife and we were trying to figure out what was going on. And a counselor was sitting there and he's like, my ex-wife asked, why is he lying all the time? And the therapist looked at me and he said, because he doesn't want to give you the keys to the kingdom. And when I heard that, my whole life suddenly came into stark relief. I was like, that's right. Nobody gets the keys to Mikey's kingdom. Oh, yeah. I'm not giving away this stuff. Heck no. And so, and lying was the first line of defense.
Right. I remember when my own parents told me, like, if you just tell us the truth, you'll be in a lot less trouble than you will be if you lie. And then one time in a sheer act of desperation, I lied and I got away with it. And I was like,
they lied.
Yeah, they were just wrong. This is so much better than being in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble. I got caught for every lie I told. So it was kind of a pointless. I got away.
I still got a few out there I'm waiting to blow up from like when I was like 16, you know.
That is true.
I don't have to do that anymore.
That's so true. Oh, I know. Man, when I first got into recovery and I was like, and I realized you had to tell the truth all the time, I was like, wow, this is really something different.
Right.
Boy, oh boy, is this a different way to live.
Yeah. When did you drink first?
I drank at about 15.
Yeah.
So right about the time I picked up the guitar, I picked up, it was perfect timing, you know?
Yeah, it was a package deal.
It was great.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, a lot of people drank and played music. I didn't have that kind of opportunity very much. We practiced at the basement of my house, my high school band, but we couldn't drink while we were practicing.
Right.
So a lot of music for me was experienced, at least playing wise, almost 90% of the playing was done not using. And I'm very lucky for that because I would probably be a much worse addict had it been the other way around.
Yeah, I heard an interview recently with Mark Maron on the Dopey podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And he was talking about the first time he played guitar on heroin and how he didn't have that inner critic in his head shutting down his impulses and was able to just play, which, right. You know, I'm just glad that I didn't automatically equate playing music with drug or use or drinking, because it would have taken me a lot longer to defuse that bomb.
Yeah, I somehow lucked into that. Now seeing music, on the other hand,
yeah,
that's a different story.
Yeah.
Going to see bands drunk was the way I did it. And that's not a great way to see music because I blacked out a lot drinking, so I don't remember a lot of the best concerts I went to. And I have a pretty good memory of things, but yeah. I do not remember most of the best concerts I went to.
Yeah, it's funny. You pay all this money to go see a band, and then we see it as performers all the time. You know, somebody paid the full price to get in, and they're just blacked out. Like, man, what a waste.
Yeah, but they don't.
Yeah, just throw your money in the fireplace.
I did.
Yeah.
Good suggestion. Yeah, so 11, I had first taste of anxiety. There was some crazy Catholic sexual repression mayhem that went on in my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get into specifics, but it was bad enough to just really just pound me with guilt. Just,
yeah.
Just for the most normal, innocent, totally unknown human experience.
Right.
I was crushed with like all the weight of this Catholic insanity and oppression.
Well, I think your parents did the right thing then, sending you to a boys' Catholic school right in the middle of that.
By the time I could think straight, I can see how problematic that was. But at that time, before I had girls in my viewpoints,
right,
before women were an actual thing that could happen,
mm-hmm.
I was seriously thinking about becoming a priest.
Yeah.
Because I knew I hadn't really gotten the in with God. Whatever they were talking about,
mm-hmm.
this God thing wasn't working out for me that great. I was missing the boat. But I figured if I was a priest, then I would get the inside scoop that everybody seemed to have.
Right.
Because I was an altar boy. I wasn't getting it. I was like holding the cross and doing all this stuff. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I can work up a lot of feelings for the pomp and circumstance, but the real true meaning of life wasn't coming surging through this.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
And then I would read things like Narcissus and Goldwyn or some kind of Dubliners, and the meaning of life would come blasting through in a way that all of Catholic school had obliterated.
Yeah.
And I would go, whoa. When you first read true poetry, like some T.S. Eliot or E.E. Cummings or whatever I was reading at the time at 17, I was like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. And then you go back and look at what you thought was really the meaning of life, mm-hmm. like Sunday Mass, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What is going on? Something's wrong.
So you're sort of, I guess, veering as a teenager into this world of rock and roll and poetry.
That's right.
Yeah.
I didn't kind of veer in. I literally ripped it open, dove in head first, and became a poet and musician, and that was how I self-identified. And an alcoholic, because I loved the idea of alcohol, and I loved the feeling it produced. I loved it. It was like, yeah. So it was a visceral awesomeness.
What would you say? So here's the thing I noticed with millennials and younger people now. Like, we got out of college, this Generation Xers, got out of high school with GPAs in the high 2s or low 3s.
That's right.
Yeah. Like, we just barely escaped flunking out of high school, and then off we went to college as if that was just something that happened, even if you were not really a student.
That's right.
And you got into SUNY Binghamton.
Yeah. I sang my way into Binghamton, actually.
Did you get a voice scholarship?
I did. I got a scholarship for voice. I went in and met I auditioned at Central Park West, in a Central Park West apartment that was enormous. And it had a giant, full-size grand piano in it.
Wow.
And me, my mom, and my dad went to this place, and I sang Man of La Mancha, The Impossible Dream, for this guy and his wife.
That's why so I've been in a band with Mike for 30 years, and every now and then, out of nowhere, he'll break into The Impossible Dream from Man of La Mancha. And it's usually sarcastically, like when we're checking into a hotel room with a quarter-inch of water on the floor or something, That just all became so clear. So this is Upper West Side apartment. Who
overlooks Central Park? I can't remember his name right now, but it used to be right on the fort, right on the tip. Was
he like a professor emeritus in the SUNY system or something? Or
yeah, he was not going to do anything in Binghamton. He was doing something at NYU, but he was filtering through this scholarship.
Right.
And they just shot me right in. He was blown away by my singing and was just like, "Oh yeah, you'll take." He set me up with all this stuff. I couldn't read music, so they got me sight singing class, and the SUNY Binghamton had a chorus at that time, and I did that for one semester and then quit because it was super boring.
Oh yeah.
Compared to rock and roll.
Right. So yeah, you got to SUNY Binghamton. Did you go straight in freshman year?
Yeah.
No,
they didn't have gap years in those days.
Yeah.
Gap year was not happening.
My gap year was 2 years of community college, but yeah.
That would have been the only. Even my friend Kevin went to community college. There was no gap.
Right.
He shot right in there. We yeah, and by this time I'm depressed and drinking at least 3 days a week. And when I'm drinking to blackout, oblivion.
3 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 days, don't touch it. And then, you know how they say binge drinking?
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
I was a binge drinker,
But not really drugs, right? You were just mostly...
I did pot. You know, I had a really bad experience in pot in high school, and like one of those psychotic breaks you have. It was not good.
No, I don't think everybody has psychotic breaks on pot. But it might have been.
I think only like a what's the borderline personality disorder with schizoaffective disorder.
Disorder.
Yeah,
yeah.
That would be the diagnosis. And then you smoke pot, and it can sometimes send you to schizophrenia, and that does happen for me.
Right.
A couple of years later, but when I smoked pot at I guess I was 16 years old. I got high the first time, had a panic attack in the high, thought I had angel dust. Now, whether I had angel dust that time or another time, I don't really know, but I did test out for it in the hospital years later, that somewhere along the line, I had gotten hit with it. But for some reason, I started having a obsessive compulsive disorder. You know, I mean, just what happened was, I was terrified I was going to lose my mind at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but if you have panic attacks, you're either fearing death or losing your mind. I was not fearing death. I was fearing losing my mind, and it would come out of nowhere, and it would immediately make my heart palpitate,
right,
my mouth go dry, like I had seen, you know, a ghost or something, and then I would just wait to bite my tongue off or do some crazy thing that I couldn't control.
Right.
Nothing ever happened. I would just sit there in sheer terror.
How
for
often
hours.
did that happen?
Every day.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
When did that start, really?
16.
Yeah.
Once that pot smoking, and from then on in, the only time it stopped
was when you were drinking.
When I was drinking.
Yeah, that's not good.
And you had to drink enough,
right,
to create the good feeling.
Yeah.
So my senior year of high school was fraught with just tough stuff.
Yeah.
I finally wind up crying to my parents delivering papers one day. They were driving me around because it was snowing out, and I just started bawling out of nowhere, just saying, I don't know what's the matter with me, but there's a hole inside of me, and I'm not getting out of it, and this isn't working anymore. So they got me to a counselor, actually a psychiatrist in those days.
Was that your first experience with a mental health professional?
Yeah.
At 17, 16?
16 on the way to 17.
Yeah.
Well, it might have been 17. Yeah, but it was probably 17 by the time I got there. And then I wrote my life story to him. And he said, you know, you should consider writing because this is really beautifully written.
Yeah.
Which was nice of him.
Yeah.
Meshakian was his name. He was an awesome guy.
Yeah.
I lied to him all the time.
Right. Well,
you're not going to give him the keys to the kingdom.
Right. There's somebody on Twitter I follow that said, imagine being so together that you tell the truth to your therapist.
That doesn't happen.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, if you, it's, yeah. I mean, if you want it to work, but if you don't really, yeah, I don't know.
You know, it worked for me in the sense that I had somebody I could go to once a week and unload the pain. Right. I could unload the pain to this guy. No one else knew what I was talking about. I mean, all my high school friends were like, what the, dude?
Yeah.
Please. And I just don't have the ability to just talk to anybody at this point. You know, at 17, I'm thinking, you know, I've ruined myself with drugs. And this guy's head of South Oaks Mental Hospital, so he's like the top clinician there. And he takes me over to the drug and alcohol ward, and he shows me inside the ward, and he says, "This is where you're going to wind up if you don't get a handle on this drinking." And I tell him, "I don't think you understand. Drinking is the only thing that works." And that was it. He never mentioned it again. He was right. I wound up in there eventually.
Right.
That exact ward.
Coincidentally, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The mother effer was right.
So how long? So you go to SUNY Binghamton. You're trying to control this anxiety that began with what may have been an angel dust experience. But also, I think for a lot of people who struggle with borderline personality disorder, that sense of losing your self from drug use is often like there's so many coping strategies that you come up with to deal with life on life's terms when you're struggling with like schizoaffective disorder and to lose that filter and the ability to control your own reactions often feels like a complete breakdown. Yeah. And then so you're dealing with that by binge drinking and obsessively writing and playing guitar at SUNY Binghamton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not really going to class.
I mean, classes. I mean, if you got to college with a 2.7 GPA like you and I did, class seems somewhat optional, you know? The kids now, there's so much more pressure on kids because, you know, it's so much harder to get into college now.
My mother would be saying 3.7.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. I had she took high school for me, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She helped me write all the papers. She was a secretary. She'd type 120 words a minute. Yeah. So I could literally dictate a paper to her, and she would sit there and type.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of my girlfriends later on had that same skill. I can tell you. I mean, I learned quickly.
Yeah.
I'm good at some things and not at others.
Right. So when did the Reasonable Men start?
Well, I get through about 2 years of college, and then the depression just gets bone-crushingly worse one summer coming home because I'm away from home. Then I come home for the summer and work at New York Telephone Company like my dad. So I'm taking the train in every summer.
Taking training with your dad?
Yeah. Some mornings with my dad. So it was like dad and son together.
Right. This is what you have to look forward to.
Exactly.
Commuting into the city every day.
This life was not fitting me.
And putting your instrument under the bed for the rest of your life. Yeah.
This was like not going to happen. But it was happening. I was doing it. And so one summer I said, dang, I have to get my crap together. I'm going to get it together and just stop writing poetry, stop playing guitar, stop drinking, and get straight A's. And I'm depressed. I'm in the middle of a depression. I'm just powering through it.
Right.
And I have a lot of willpower. Mm-hmm. So I stop all that stuff. I get to school and I start getting straight A's for the first time at SUNY. And SUNY is not an easy school. And I'm not taking easy classes. I'm in psych stat. I'm in like advanced, a bunch of higher level literature classes, and they are hard. One of the teachers is a Harvard educated, brilliant guy. And I'm taking philosophy and whatnot. And so I'd say about midterms, I stopped sleeping.
Oh.
And then,
so maybe you were kind of on a manic thing. At this point.
You're exactly 100% right. I get about 7 days into not sleeping.
Ooh.
And that can kill you.
Yeah.
Physically, you can die. And I have a complete psychotic breakdown. So I'm standing on a bridge. I remember exactly when it happened. And the top of my head felt like it just blew off. And there's like a fire burning on the top of my head. And I'm like, what's going on? Oh, I know what's going on. I'm the Antichrist. And I start walking around like it's the end of the world. And I'm in full-blown delusion, feeling all those feelings. I have like a complete, it's like a film with feelings and smells. I remember all of this vividly. And
it's interesting. I knew that you had a psychotic break somewhere in your academic career at SUNY, but I didn't realize it followed like a half a semester of abstinence. I thought it was at the end of a long drinking binge, but
no, it was exactly I had taken away the only medicine that I had allowed myself.
yeah,
There was nothing left except me working extremely hard. And I can do a lot of good work, and I was doing well. But I guess it's kind of like when you're super intellectually living your life, but you're not in touch with your deep feelings because you can't be.
right.
That's really where I was. It was like the head and the heart just broke apart, and the head was running the show, and the heart was like, dude, there's no way this is going to work for us.
Right.
We have to crash this car. Yeah. So we drive the car off the road, and
Right.
boom.
You think that's what your dad's life was like when he put his clarinet and saxophone under the bed and just like tucked it in and went to New York Bell every day for 30-something years?
He was so filled with anger.
I mean, wouldn't you be?
I mean, it had to be that way for him. I mean, that's my sense of it was like he had slummed with my mother, and I didn't realize later that my mother was an amazing woman. I just
Right.
couldn't even understand what was going on because the dynamic was skewed,
Right. Because he was probably angry a lot.
He was always angry.
Yeah.
So was my mom. Everyone was mad. My house was like everybody loved each other, and everybody just started smashing stuff. I mean,
Right.
it was like you flip a coin. It was either "good night, I love you," or like kicking doors down, throwing television sets at one another. I mean, whatever.
yeah.
Fists. I mean, it was the Wild West.
Yeah, so you tried to like dig in and do this like I'm going to do the adult thing. I'm going to give up guitar,
gonna kill
poetry, alcohol, and your head exploded.
Yeah.
What
Blew
happened?
apart.
What happened next?
Man. Well, I wound up at that hospital.
The very one in
The
Manhattan.
very one it was on Long Island.
was on Long
It's
Island,
South Oaks. It was Huntington, and or Smithtown. Beautiful hospital.
How did you get from upstate back to that hospital? Did you call your parents? Or?
I called my parents. They didn't believe me. I talked to Lee Hirschkorn, who was my roommate at the time, and I said, "I'm in trouble." And he said, "What's the matter?" I said,
I'm the Antichrist.
"Yeah." I was like, "I feel like it's the end of the world, and I'm Satan." And he's like, "Dude, you're totally not." And he puts a pair of sunglasses on me. He called my mom, bought me a bus ticket back home.
Right.
And we went around and played football on the quad. And I was just like, by now it had been like 8 days. There was no sleep. So I was like, I didn't even know what was going on. And he put me on the bus. And that was like a 5-hour bus ride that seemed like eternity. Because and it's such a cliche, it seemed like eternity. If you know anything about really bad acid trips, it skews your sense of time so
Right.
that like 1 second really seems like an hour. So much, because you in dream state, you can have like a year go on in a dream
Right.
within minutes.
Right.
So you would not believe what the infinite now turns into during psychosis. It's painful. And so I'm on this bus, just in the back of the bus, watching the trees go by. It's sometime in November, and I'm done. By the time I get home, I get out of the car. I don't know what, my parents must have picked me up at the bus stop, and I got out of the car and I started crying. And it must have been the middle of the night. It must have been about 10:30 at night. They brought me over to Mishakian at 10:30 at night, and they just checked me right into the hospital and started pounding me with
Antipsychotics. Yeah.
Thorazine and Haldol, lithium, and a couple other fun things. Dalmane to get me to sleep. I didn't go to sleep for another day.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I fought it. All those drugs, I fought them.
Yeah.
I fought the heck out of them. But eventually it helped. It broke it. It didn't completely break it because, if you're psychotic, once you crack over that egg, you're still looking to see when it's coming back.
Yeah.
It took many years.
So as I recall, from what you told me in the past, you're admitted to the hospital mid to late November.
Yep.
You Thanksgiving in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And then you AMA'd right before Christmas, right?
Yeah, Christmas Eve AMA.
Yeah. That means leaving the hospital against medical advice, AMA.
In other words, they took me off every single one of those drugs
just in time for Christmas.
One day. Just to come home for Christmas.
Merry Christmas. How was that?
It was great. I got home and I was like, well, I knew I wasn't the Antichrist anymore. I kind of figured out what had happened. I knew enough. I had read enough stories since I was a psych minor at Binghamton. I knew enough about it to know that what had happened to me. But I didn't know what that really meant. But I knew it had happened. So I could just... I started checking the date to see what date it was. I remember walking all the way down to the deli to catch the paper to make sure it was actually Christmas Eve,
Walking down...
Because I didn't believe anybody. I was paranoid, as they say.
Yeah. So you were home at this point?
Yeah, they just took me right home.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend was home. She came to see me. She actually stayed at the house for a couple of days. And we had like a big party, the usual Mantione Christmas 7-fish dinner. Everybody came over.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting for the hospital to call and take me back.
Yeah.
Because it felt like a day pass,
Right.
And the hospital kept calling.
Right.
But they weren't bringing me back. My mother had said, "You're not going back there."
Too expensive?
No, they didn't think it was working. My mom didn't think the hospital was working. So she just, when they took me out AMA, they just took me out because they didn't like what was happening to me.
How do you think that appeared to them? Like, what was happening to you that they were?
I was like a blithering. I was like Frankenstein. I had gained 15 pounds of water weight. I was shuffling my feet. I was walking around mumbling. I had developed a tic that to this day I still have. I wound up with tardive, whatever they call it, where you suck your cheeks and chew on your cheeks.
That's the Thorazine, right?
Yeah. So I wound up with permanent physiological stuff.
They sort of hit you with the full barrage of medicines.
They had to.
Yeah.
They really did. I don't know if it wasn't for modern medicine, I don't know that I would be here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is a treatment for what happened to me, but if it wasn't for my parents pulling me out AMA, I don't think I'd be here either.
Yeah, you'd still be permanently.
I would be. I would still be. They would be extinguishing whatever happens for the next 30 years out with whatever they could hit me with. Because I was all about diagnosing myself. I was all about the clinical diagnosis, and I was all about the drugs that would work on the clinical diagnosis. At least part of me was.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to be. When there's no other way other than the medicine, it's it can be tough. So they took me out, and like a good alcoholic, by New Year's Eve, I was drinking again.
There was the medicine that had worked so far.
I knew.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of glasses of champagne, and it worked. I was like, okay, I'll just put that in the back of my mind.
Back in the world.
Yeah. And I was like, and then I don't know, being out of the hospital, shortly thereafter, I started feeling better. And all my friends were up at college, and I wasn't in college anymore.
Yeah.
I basically withdrew medical withdrawal. And eventually, somehow, I got a car out of my parents, and I rematriculated into school for summer classes and went back to school with a vehicle and a new lease on life, and that's when I started The Reasonable Men.
So The Reasonable Men is a band with Dan Horowitz, who's been your constant companion and bass player now for over 30 years.
That's right.
And the Schwartz brothers, Dan and, I just blanked on Dan's
Palmatier.
Mike Palmatier,
Mike
drummer.
Palmatier, Dan Schwartz, and Dan Horowitz and me.
Yeah.
It was just the four of us. And actually, we gathered a bunch of people. Margot Buchanan sang with us for a while.
Yeah.
This guy Thor played with us. This guy Neil played saxophone with us. I mean, we the band grew. I think at our biggest we had it was 6 people. No, 7.
Wow.
7 people. And
reasonable man name comes from the legal term for like what a reasonable man would do in any.
Yeah. Yeah, legal term. What would a reasonable man do in this situation?
Right.
Not what the reasonable man did.
Right.
It was clear. we were like a kind of a half cover band, half proto post punk band. You know? And we were doing the DIY thing. We didn't even know it. You know.
Right.
It was awesome. We had a great time. But the way I started writing songs was I used to go over to Farns's apartment, who is another buddy of mine up at school. His dad was a professor. And after I had the breakdown, he had come back from Berkeley School of Music, and he was like,
Farns went to Berkeley?
Yes, Farns went to Berkeley. And he was like, we need to start a band. And he said, I have this band called The Rudes. And he started showing me all the songs he had written. He had written like 120 songs. And these songs were like no other songs I had ever heard in my life. Like I only knew like Led Zeppelin and like, The Who and the Stones.
Twisted Sister.
Yeah, Twisted Sister.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Big part of your adolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like all the heavy metal Long Island bands, Van Halen, Yeah, it was awesome, And so and here are these mimeograph songs, like the title of the song would be What I Imagine is a Movie by Me, or Our Love Drove the Officers Away. And I was like, this is a song? Are you kidding me? And he would sing it. He'd be, what I imagine is a movie by me. There on the beach, I saw you standing naked on the shore, like a child of a distant land. And I was like, are you kidding me?
And yet, here it is, 40 years later. And you remember the whole first verse.
Oh, yeah. You'd never forget that song.
Yeah.
I was like, if this guy can write songs, I can write songs.
Yeah.
So I started writing songs.
So at that point, you've been playing guitar almost 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
But now you're going to write your own stuff.
That's right.
Right.
And I started off with like Streets of Fear. It was like the first song I ever wrote. And it was a good song. It was like Bruce Springsteen,
Yeah.
He was cool. Bruce Springsteen saved my life.
Parenthetically, I didn't get Bruce until you guys in 5'8" beat it into my head. I was not from the Northeast. I was Southern and rural, and if I needed a spokesman for the working class, I had Willie Nelson.
You did not need Bruce.
But man, I finally came around. Now I can't even hear the song growing up without bursting into tears.
Yeah, it's an amazing journey. Yeah, my first experience with Bruce that made sense was I was driving the Matador station wagon and Born to Run came on, and Bruce was supposed to be something I didn't like as a heavy metalhead.
That's such a good song, though.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, this song is amazing. Yeah. It's kind of like after the 50th time I heard Reckoning.
Yeah.
And suddenly South Central Rain is like, oh my God, this song he's a genius.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like,
it's undeniable.
Yep.
You can pretend for a while, but at some point, Born to Run or South Central Rain is going to finally crack your cynical resistance to it, and you're going to realize what genius it is.
Well, you hope anyway. Either that or you just stay with Zeppelin and The Who.
Yeah.
It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we started the band, and I had this sense about my life. Are
you in school during the Reasonable Men time?
Yes.
So you're still in school.
I go back to school, and I tried to stop drinking for a year.
How'd that work out?
It worked out great. I was super happy. It was the first time I somehow something happened.
It was just like white knuckle abstinence, or you working?
No, I had some sort of spiritual experience, as they say. I had a really bad night, and I took a bunch of sleeping pills.
Is it a suicide attempt, or it's just a let's stop the noise machine in my head attempt?
A little of both.
Yeah.
a little of like, I can't take it anymore. I was so hatefully angry at everybody. And I just wanted to go to sleep.
Is this the night that Suit of Sin, that song is written about, or is that a different night?
It's sort of. It's a combination, but it's one of them.
Yeah.
And but this was the pivotal point. It's the first time I have like any kind of experience that kind of trumps alcohol. And I woke up the next morning and I don't know. It's going to sound crazy, but I didn't have any more anxiety. And I was like, I take about 12 Dalmane, which should have really punched my clock pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know those pills.
No, they were a pretty strong sleeping pill.
Yeah.
And I took 12 of them. So I should have been pretty close to hospitalization territory. But, you know, who knows? Anyway, the next morning, as opposed to a hangover, I felt great. And I had no more anxiety. And I started going around going, when is it going to happen? I would go to the mall, the shopping mall, to see if it would show up, and it wouldn't. And then I'd go jump in the water to swim to see if the anxiety would come back, and it wouldn't come back. And I remember going, oh my God, this is like, what's happening? And I started thinking there must be some kind of God behind this, because, you know, so I started, I didn't know what God was. I didn't have any, it wasn't Christian or anything. I just had this idea that something more powerful than me
had taken the wheel.
Something happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I was crazy. I mean, I was just, months away from psychosis, so I was probably popping back on the other side of a,
right.
I mean, you could just say it was probably another swoop of,
right.
of the, manic depressive swing.
Right.
And that swing lasted for about 8 months. And then I decided to start drinking again because everything felt so good. Brilliant decision.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, that all came crashing in.
Wheels came off again.
Oh, boy, did they ever.
Yeah.
Couldn't stop drinking. Couldn't get any good effects from the drinking.
Oh, yeah.
Anxiety's back. Starting to have hives because I'm poisoning myself with the alcohol.
Well, hives are a histamine reaction. That's your liver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the liver was not doing good.
Yeah, yeah.
When they gave me a blood test, they were like, your liver's, wait a minute.
Right. You had the liver of a dead man.
Yeah. Like, what are you drinking?
Right.
Rot gut vodka is what I'm drinking by now.
Vodka seems to be the last stop for a lot of people.
Mr. Boston's.
Yeah.
You didn't have any money, but boy, I found Mr. Boston's.
Yeah.
The people that I drank Mr. Boston's with at that point are now dead. Both of them.
Who were they?
Oh, yeah. Mike Quinlivan, he was my main Mr. Boston's guy.
Yeah.
And we drank and took pills, whatever pills I had left, and
right.
we would smoke some hash and drink this, and get into fist fights, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Do the
you think you're better than me fight.
Right. The Oneida step-in bar with the tracheotomy guy. He would sit there, what are you guys doing tonight? And we'd be like, we're going out and getting smashed again. And he'd be like, I just drink one for me. He was like,
was the Oneida was a bar in Binghamton? Or?
It was a Binghamton bar. It was actually an Endicott Johnson bar. It was right by the old abandoned shoe factories, and we would bust into those shoe factories drunk, and then break stuff, and then go back to the practice space and practice.
Right.
Drive the motorcycle around.
Wasn't Oneida like a utopian cult in the upstate New York? Isn't that right? That's where the silverware company came out of this?
Yeah, It might be pronounced differently. I don't know. Yeah. All I can tell you is everything around this place was, it had hit a peak in the 40s. And
right.
Now it was basically a bunch of bars, a couple of churches, and obliterated capitalism. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the story, right? American manufacturing peaked in 1946, where fully one half of every manufactured thing in the world was made in the United States, and it's been downhill ever since.
That's right. Well, anyway, we did that, and the band started taking off at this point. We really started doing well, and we had a following. We were making our own tapes, And I started getting into petty crime, stupid stuff.
That's when all the insurance fraud happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had some insurance fraud. We had some breaking and entering. We
don't need to get into specifics on any of that. I'm sure the statute of limitations has expired, but
there's probably some people that I took stuff from that would like it back.
Yeah.
But
you didn't have a drug habit though. Like you.
No, I was really kind of pedestrian alcoholic. I mean, the drugs were just because other people were taking drugs and I didn't want to say no.
Yeah.
And I also secretly wanted to see if I'd have another bad reaction. There was always like, well,
back of your mind, yeah.
That's right. Will this mescaline get me? Will
right.
this mess up my mind? Let's see. Whee! It was like, I don't know.
Yeah, so the reason women are taking off, at some point you guys made the decision to move back to New York City to be a band.
That's right.
And Horowitz moves to Harlem, right? No,
That's
he
right.
moves to...
Well, no, that was the summer. They moved to Harlem, and they started studying boxing, him and Brodsky.
Mark Brodsky.
Yeah. They were... I just saw Brodsky last night, as a matter of fact.
Is he in town?
He was in town for a minute. He's going to be back for our show at the Caledonia.
Cool.
For the Monsoon show.
Yeah.
But anyway, he moved to New York and said, we have to move to New York.
And you go back to Long Island.
Well, I had to go back to Long Island because the police were after me and I didn't have enough money to pay. At one point, I was living on a porch, not paying rent, of course, because I was on a porch in the winter. And I would coat my face with Vaseline because, in Binghamton, it's cold. It's not just 30 degrees. It's like 10 or 4.
Right.
And it was probably 4 degrees. And when the cop knock came, they're like, is Mr. Mantione in this house? And everyone was like, no, he's not in the house. And I was out on the porch in a sleeping bag.
Right.
And somehow I missed that.
Dodged that bullet.
Went home.
Right.
Borrowed some money from my parents, paid off all the fines and court case stuff. And
when was the High C incident though? Was that was that during this time?
The High C was 8 years old.
Oh, I thought that was.
This is pre-Thomas. This is just me and my sister at the kitchen table with my mom. My mom is looking at me. I'm looking at her. She's opening a can of High C grape juice. So with a
millennials will not know that every beverage used to come in a steel can.
Yes.
And High C had a top that you had to use a can opener to get into.
That's right. It's a grape juice.
Right.
Now, ordinarily, you'd use a punch.
Right.
It would just pop a little hole.
Little triangle-shaped hole.
Triangle-shaped hole would get punched in the top of this steel can. You'd pour it out very neatly. You'd pop 2 holes, one for the pouring and one for the air.
Yeah.
Now, my mom couldn't find that can opener, and she was not happy about that. And she was opening it with the
She thinks that you lost it, I'm guessing.
I can tell you that either that was happening or I wasn't eating my broccoli. There was a standoff.
Right.
And she gets done opening the entire can. Now it's just a giant brim of grape juice.
Open vat of purple dye.
Yes. And I said something like, why are you opening it like that? That's not very smart. It's going to spill. And she picks that can up and hurls it at my head. It hits the wall and explodes grape juice everywhere. It was like a grenade of grape juice. And she starts screaming, get the rags! Get the rags! Now, there's a rag box down in the basement. So I take off. I'm covered in grape juice. My sister's covered in grape juice. Now, we're not laughing. We know what's about to happen, and it's not going to be good. People, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So I run downstairs, and then I realize this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. Because as I get downstairs and I look in the basement, there's a waterfall of grape juice that's pouring down into the basement.
Through the floor.
Through the floor.
Yeah.
And there are 2 neatly folded baskets of laundry, of white laundry.
Oh, God.
And the grape juice is falling on this white laundry. At that point, everything goes black.
Yeah. Another one of those needle off the record times. Yeah.
Just don't remember.
Yeah, no, I guess the thing I was remembering was when you moved back home from Binghamton for this summer, Harvest Coast to New York. We'll get to the musical equipment making its way to Athens.
Oh, yeah.
But
this is going to be like a 3-day long. See, we know too much about each other.
Right,
That's a problem. I'm going to interview you for the podcast.
Fez is doing April 1st of this year. Fez is.
Okay. He's going to interview?
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to send him some information.
I was thinking about the wedding reception story where you came home and threw up in the clean laundry. It was another clean laundry incident, but we'll save
digress.
that. Yeah, we'll save that for the bonus round. So at some point, all of your musical equipment somehow ends up in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah. Well, we never got to that apartment in Brooklyn.
Right.
And Farns calls one day on the phone and goes, I've taken all the gear in a rider truck, and I've moved to Athens, Georgia. I would like you to join me. And like a good alcoholic, I just tell him to go fuck himself. And then I hang up and I'm like, how dare he? I'm the band leader.
Right.
Screw him. So I stew for about 3 days, and then one morning I wake up and go, guess what I'm doing?
Right.
I'm getting the hell out of here.
Right.
I'm going to Athens now. And I packed up and went. It was like 3 weeks later.
And then Dan and Teresa Cannon
They came down.
Yeah,
and
Mike
Palmatier. We all just came down because Farns stole everything.
Were you sober when you got here?
Yeah. And I should say that, I am in no way saying anything about anything in regard to sobriety or not sobriety. Needless to say, I had hit some type of recovery and was very into it at this point.
So this was the summer?
This is summer 1987.
You bailed out of SUNY Binghamton.
This is like 4 years after my nervous breakdown.
Right, with this vague idea that you might go back to school.
Yeah.
But you get home for the summer. You have, I guess, your first meeting at some point that summer, and then all of your equipment magically moves to Athens, Georgia without you. That's
right.
And you came down here.
I came down here to be a famous rock star.
I mean, it worked for a lot of people.
It did.
So at that time, Athens, Georgia, Inside Out has just come out.
Yep. 86. It came out in 1986. We saw it when it was released. And
so whoever was in charge of the equipment, we're not going to name any names, saw that movie, I'm guessing, and decided that Athens, Georgia was the place to be in a rock band.
Well, what's funny about that is his brother, Paul, naming some name, was actually here in law school, and that's why he came to Athens.
Oh.
His brother was playing music too, a little bit.
Yeah.
But not really anything serious yet. He would later form many good bands.
Yeah.
One of which was called Big Fish Ensemble.
Yeah, we played with them a bunch.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to play with the Indigo Girls, but we'll get into that in another episode. So 87, you come to Athens.
Yeah.
And you're playing music as the Reasonable Men.
That's right. And I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
And it's all brand new.
Yeah.
It's a different way of not drinking.
Well, and I think that when we first met, I had gotten sober for the first time, and we had a lot of conversations about how it wasn't just about sobriety, that your recovery was also about controlling your mental illness and your anxiety.
That's right.
And it was working for the most part.
It worked. I went into a depression when I moved down here, and when you met me, I was still in it.
Oh, yeah.
I was...
Because remember, you had to hide out at my apartment once because your girlfriend had shot up your apartment.
Oh, yeah. There was some good times.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of... I was actually me getting out of the depression. But I really don't get out of the depression until probably 1991. So I'm in recovery, going to a counselor for 3 years in Athens, Georgia, before I'm really like out of depression. And it's that correlates kind of to when we start getting more popular.
Yeah, so I joined 5A in 1989, the end of 1989, like early fall, late summer.
Yep.
And by 91, we've gone to San Francisco to make the record at Brilliant Studios.
Yep.
And that was the first 5/8. Like we had 2 cassette releases prior to that did really well. I think we sold more of those cassettes than we sold of anything else we ever released. Maybe we peaked with Passive Aggressive, the cassette.
Well, it's a great cassette. I mean, the timing of it, when we went out to San Francisco, I had been in recovery for 5 years. And we were out there, and I picked up 5 years in San Francisco. So it was 93. 91, we released Passive Aggressive. So we had quite a run.
Yeah.
By the time we get out to Brilliant Studios,
We were there, 5-6 weeks making a record? It was funny because they told us, like, it takes as long as it takes. How long should we book? We'll just make a record. We'll figure out how long it takes by how it goes. And then they got a band. I almost remember the name of the band. They got another band that made them an offer for the space if they could get us in at a certain time. And they were like, "Oh, your record's finished. Bye."
That's right.
Yeah.
We were done. I think it was 2 weeks. I don't think we even got. I don't even know if it was a full 2 weeks. It was not as long as we thought we were going.
No,
that's for sure.
No,
but it was amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
what a great experience. I remember listening to one of those songs, Desperate Tonight, and thinking it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard myself do. And I was like, wow, I love this.
Yeah.
But it was hard making that record.
We didn't really know how to make records yet.
I didn't know how to record.
Fuck, we barely know how to live our lives at that point.
I wasn't living my life worth a flip.
And we were trying to
make
make a masterpiece rather than just trying to get some songs recorded, which is never you don't want to jump off from, like, let's change the world just to get the songs down.
Yeah, we had some pretty high expectations of ourselves, I would say. I would dare say great expectations.
Well, we started in 91 or 92. We started doing 200 plus shows a year, and we did that for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it was 6 long, brutal, but fun years.
I mean, I look back on it with a certain amount of nostalgia, but the things I remember, the things from that time that I remember most fondly are like pulling back into Athens after being gone for like 8 weeks.
Not me.
Yeah.
I remember when I would pull into Athens, I would be like going, I'm just coming back to the loneliest place in the world, my home.
Yeah. Well, as the loneliest I've ever been was when my marriage was failing, and
that marriage, my first marriage, was always failing.
Yeah.
we were both super smart, and it never worked.
Right.
We were like oil and water, but unable to make a good salad dressing. If oil and water didn't make a salad dressing,
no, they don't.
Us.
Oil and vinegar makes salad dressing. Oil and water just make a mess.
Oh, right, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
So oil and vinegar, yeah, but we weren't that.
No,
we were. Someone was floating on the top,
right,
and the other one was just trying to light them on fire.
Right.
I don't know.
So I remember that those years of constant touring were there was a lot of anxiety. We all had a lot of anxiety because we're putting a ton of pressure on ourselves. But your anxiety would sort of peak out every now and then and make it really hard for you to perform.
I had in my mind, 5/8 was a vehicle of mental health, and it was my job to channel my mental illness through the music. And so I was supposed to be like some sort of shaman. Like, can I be any crazier? I don't know. But there I was, like, trying to go as crazy as I could get on stage.
Every night.
Every night. And I remember, like, Warren going, well, Mike, that was a really good show, but you just weren't as crazy as the other night when you were really good and really crazy. So I'd be like, oh, yeah, I better get really crazy.
So rather than having that wound heal, you were just constantly, like, picking that scab off.
Yeah, and pouring battery acid into it.
Yeah.
And, like, I think as ego fulfilling prophecies go, it's really not super healthy to do that.
Yeah.
Does that, but I mean, it worked in a sense, I guess. But it was really nice when we made that record Gasolina, and I had run out of steam by Gasolina. But the one thing I did find out was there was a technical aspect of making records and music that was really fun.
Yes.
And there was a glorious kind of awesomeness at being really good at making music. And Ed Stasium kind of gave that gift to me. He was like, God, Mike, you are just brilliant, and you're a great singer and a great guitar player, and I love working with you. And this was a guy who had worked with
The Ramones.
He was the fifth member of the Ramones, and had played a guitar solo on a Ramones record.
Yes.
And he was telling me that, and I was like, it was the most validation I had ever gotten from anybody about the music at that level, at least.
I learned so much about recording from Ed that you have to you don't. I've seen producers who break their musicians down for some egomaniacal bullshit reason, but I found that I get the best performances out of people when I work with them and I make sure that they know that I believe in them. My dog has just jumped into Mike's lap.
We're bonding.
Yeah.
This interview's over. I've just found a new friend. And I'm very emotionally vulnerable right now, so my new friend loves me.
I think Parker is a very good emotional support dog.
I got the little paw.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes Scout will come by and give me one of those.
Yeah, Scout's a great dog, too.
Oh, yeah. He's got a little of your Chihuahua in him, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we bonded on that experience. It was just so tough, though, because while that was happening, Sean was going through the worst time of his life. And it was just like, it was a cacophony of hell. We had great stuff and bad stuff all at once. But
it's hard to have a healthy, normal personal life when you're gone 2/3 of the time. And none of us really had stable home lives.
Ever.
Yeah.
None of us had stable home lives. Maybe Dan Horowitz.
Yeah.
But it was when you think about it, we were poor musicians. We were well below the poverty line, probably making about $12,000 a year.
That was a good year.
And that was killer.
Yeah.
And living really off of PDs.
Right.
Literally, we'd eat one meal at the club, whatever it was, and then we'd find some amazing place like, that Mom's in Louisiana.
Yeah, that place in Ruston. Sarah's Kitchen.
Sarah's Kitchen, that was right.
Yep.
And, and we would look for all of those unbelievable, moments of dining, Oogle Stitches or...
Oogle Stitch, in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Is that place still open?
No, it is not. But our favorite mac and cheese place is still open over there, Rocky and Carlos.
Yeah.
Just we were poor, not a lot of... I spent all my money on going to see a counselor.
Yeah.
Because I needed a counselor.
Yeah.
And we'd get off the road and I'd have maybe $50 or $60 and I'd make sure that money got to her.
Right.
It was like $45 a session or something, and then of course, I lived at meetings.
Yeah.
I lived in meetings.
This was before Nucci Space.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there was no
Way
subsidized mental health care for musicians.
Somewhere in our touring in the 90s, Nucci, killed himself, and the Nucci Space began.
So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Nucci Space is a nonprofit here that I talked about in the intro of the show, because I talk about the intro of every show. But it was founded by the surviving mother of a young man who committed suicide at the depths of his depression. And Nucci Space provides subsidized mental health care for musicians from Athens. So that sort of sprang up in the mid to late 90s. And I started going there after 5/8. So I left 5/8 in 1998 or 9. I think our last show where I played was New Year's Eve of
Yeah, I think it was
1999.
Was it 90? Because 99, I think Rizzy was in the band by then. Well, maybe, yeah.
Well, so I would have been December 31st of
That's
1998
right.
would have
That's
been my
right.
last show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Nuts.
Yeah. So you got divorced eventually from that first marriage that was going so poorly.
Yeah. We had 3 children together who are just awesome, and I love them so much. And really, I've come to understand my ex-wife pretty well now.
Yeah.
And I'm in a pretty good place with it. We don't talk, but we can co-parent together in a way that this year we really kind of came together in a way that I didn't think we could. Me and Kat do love our kids, and so we're able to put that, this tough stuff behind and move forward. Thank goodness. And that ended, and through. Let's see, it's 32 years this year without a drink or a drug. And in that time frame, I've been to, maybe 3 mental health professionals that really made a difference for me.
Have you ever been on meds?
No. I in 1987, when I started seeing the therapist down here in Athens, she said, "There's a new medicine, Mike, I can put you on, but I don't know if you need it." About 3 years into my recovery from alcohol, I went back and visited that Mishakian guy from my counseling sessions in the hospital. And he looked at me and he said, "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." He said, "You're not the same person who came in here 3 years ago, and don't ever stop what you're doing. Because nobody gets to do what you're doing right now from where you were."
Yeah.
And I believed him, so I kept doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with honesty and kind of, digging through stuff and stuff that you hear all the time, like taking account of your life and
Right.
acting as if, when you can, and forgiving yourself when you can't.
Yeah. Well, accountability is a big part of my recovery. Holding myself accountable and responsible, and I've seen you do that so much more in the last few years. But you've sort of practiced some radical self-acceptance, and I came back to that. So I left the band in 99. The first day of 1999 was my last day of the band, and then I came back in 2007 when the drummer who had taken over for me had to move out to California, and I've been in the band ever since. I think I've been in the band longer since coming back than I was. See, 2000. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. We made some records.
Yeah, we have.
Both happily married.
Yep. Most definitely happily married.
And now you're taking incredible care of yourself. You're eating very carefully. You're running.
Yeah.
You doing yoga?
I don't do yoga.
But you meditate.
I meditate. I do a form of Buddhist meditation.
Yeah.
Called metta. It's loving kindness meditation. It's old school Buddhism, but they study it at UCLA. It's great. I like it. It's hard to do though.
Yeah, well, if it was easy, right?
It is not easy. It's like anything else. It's like learning how to play guitar. It really is like learning a skill. It's not a skill you can say, "Hey, I got this."
Right. Well, I would never say, "Hey, I don't need to learn any more drums."
Yeah, this is true.
Right. Like you just keep refining your abilities.
That's right. Keep getting better. And so yeah, it's I do that. I do. I still go to my recovery meetings. I think that the number one thing in my life is recovery. I would say everything else falls in under that.
So it seems to me that from the very beginning, anxiety has kind of been the sort of hellhound that has followed you.
Yeah.
And made your life harder. Where are you at with your anxiety now?
Well, the things that kind of make me anxious now revolve more around either work, like probably normal stuff, like work stuff, and like family. They say you're only as happy as your happiest child. And
or your least happy child.
Least happiest child. And so, I think I have some anxiety around that because I hate to see him suffer, and that's probably the toughest thing I have to deal with. And the way I really cope with that is by realizing that, I think about myself, and when I was really looking for somebody to take my pain away, it never worked. But when I took on my pain and just kind of went into it, I started getting relief. And I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, not everybody gets to be as lucky as I have. I feel like, for whatever reason, as I gotten older, it's gotten easier for me to be somewhat sane. Like the old heavy depression and really intense anxiety and feelings of paranoia have kind of slipped away a little bit. And I don't know whether that's just because I work at it a lot or whether I'm just lucky. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never, it's, you just got to find something that you love to do that works for you,
Yeah.
And some people find it, they'll get like medication and a routine. Or for me, it was picking up routines, small routines that didn't seem very dramatic at the time, like getting honest all the time. So yeah,
Man, I feel like you're in a really good spot these days. I feel like we're writing the best music we've ever written, and it's great.
We're playing the best shows we've ever played.
Yeah, it's wild to be finally figuring it out now that we've been in a band 30 years together.
I know. Well, it's like we put a lot of time and energy into it, and I guess it's an educational process.
Yeah,
and we're like, I don't know.
Well, I think that people define the progress or success or failure of a band based on a very narrow set of like sort of capitalist concepts about, is this sellable? Is this,
right.
And the fact is like we're on this other thing. Like we play music because we love music and we love to create, and other people's sort of determinants of our success are kind of immaterial. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't really matter we're just going to keep making records. So,
Yeah. And that kind of friendship that we formed along with that, I think makes it almost like the best kind of group therapy you can have.
I don't know what guys who don't have a recovery program or a band do in middle age for fun, like
golf, hunting. I think about it as a band of brothers going out hunting together,
Yeah.
I've seen fishermen really enjoy themselves
Yeah,
with each
I love
other.
to fish.
Yeah, fishing. Yeah. I mean, for me, playing music is my fishing or golf. I think about it that way. I try to understand, because there's a line drawn on that side of masculinity that I'm not supposed to cross. You know what I mean?
Right.
You will not go here to the fishing land.
Right.
You're not going to go to hunting land, young man.
Yeah. I think that might also be a byproduct of where you grew up. It's not a big like fishing and hunting community on Long Island.
Oh, yes, there is.
Oh, is there?
Oh, yeah. My dad was a fisherman. He tried to give me the bug. He built his own boat and, took me fishing all the time. We never hunted. He wasn't a hunter. But there's a huge hunting community up in New York on my Catskill Mountains.
Well, upstate. Yeah.
But Long Island, they go up there. They'll get together and go hunt. They get together, go skiing.
Yeah.
It's, and then there's that whole thing where Long Islanders will go put two together, skiing and hunting. Yeah. They call it some kind of Olympic thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's up there. It's a kind of, my dad was not a gun guy, so I didn't ever get the gun bug. Till Lethal Enforcer,
Right. Oh my God, I haven't thought about that video game in forever. We played that video game. Every time we ran across it at a venue, we would spend $5.
Yeah, whenever I think about my Buddhist non-violent stance, I think about me and a game of Lethal Enforcer.
Yeah.
Shooting everyone.
Yeah. Man, you know the podcast. You know what happens now. We do the questions. Yeah,
that's right.
Let's jump into those because I know you've listened enough that you know what's that. So, what's your fondest memory of a meal that you've had?
I mean, so many. Me and you have had many of those meals together.
Man. Amazing meals.
The first time that Sean's brother cooked for us. Do you remember that in Fort
Dallas?
Worth? In Dallas.
Yeah,
that was
that luxury hotel. That was an amazing meal.
And it ended with that basket of ice cream that had cayenne pepper on it, and we were like,
Mexican chocolate ice cream. Yeah, it was insane.
We were just. It was amazing. Yeah. Sea bass. It was just crazy. Yeah. One of the most transformative meals I ever had in my life was after my grandma Florence's funeral. The family got together at Tomasa's, which is it's a mobster Italian place in Brooklyn. They shot somebody there. You can look it up. But Tommaso, the guy who owned it, was an opera singer. And the whole family's there. And now both grandmas are gone. And we're all there having the big dinner like you do after the funeral. And we're all talking about it. My mom is upset. And
It's your mom's mom?
It's Florence? My mom's mom, yeah. Florence was my mom's mom. And they were super close. She was an only child. And her dad's already gone. So this is just total devastation for my mother.
Yeah.
And I realize as I'm going back to the bathroom, there's a Renaissance painting on the wall of some Renaissance, I forget who the artist was, but it was a farm scene. And I suddenly realized that everybody dies and that I'm with everybody. It's going to be totally okay. And that the human experience has death in it. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, this is like the most beautiful play that could ever be. We're going to have a very brief time, but the people in this room love each other. And the people that learn about this are going to, and are open to it, are going to be like, they'll be able to love each other in a way that they can't if they're not aware of it. It's kind of like that Flaming Lips song, Do You Realize?
Yeah.
It's that moment way before that song is even written for me. And then Tommaso comes out and he sings Ave Maria to the family as we're sitting there. And we're all bawling and he's singing Ave Maria.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
He's an opera singer.
Yeah. And the meal, to say it was the most amazing meal, you can't even believe the kind of food they cook. You know, the fish, the ravioli, the scungili, the bacala, it's just like all this... the bitter fish with capers and the succulent veal. I mean, and it's, it's Italian family style, so it's all there. And there's the antipasto. It's 3 courses with dessert, So, yeah, that was the number one. If you have to pick one, that's the meal.
Right. Yeah, man.
That's the meal.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, second question, what's the most frightened you've ever been?
Well, that's the nervous breakdown. Yeah. So when it sucker punches me and the head goes on fire, I'm actually standing next to Margot Buchanan. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to explain to her that I've just gone crazy. I'm like, I've just gone crazy. And she's like, I know. And I'm like, no, you don't know what I mean. I mean, I'm really crazy. And she's like, what does that mean? I said, let's go. We have to go to a church right now. So it was like midnight or something, and we're walking around Binghamton, and we get to the church, and I realize that this isn't stopping. And I'm thinking to myself, this is probably what the apostles felt like when they had that fire on top of their head.
Right.
And I'm making all these kind of connections and that aren't there, and just...
I think that the paranoia, where you start making those kind of connections, like when you see the room of the person who's had a psychotic break, and there's like pictures and yarn and thumbtacks and string, is they're trying to make sense out of a chaotic world, because if they feel like if they don't make sense out of it, then they're going to lose their minds.
Right.
So you're looking for these, like, anything to sort of hold it together, to define it.
One of the things about meditation I find so amazing is throughout the psychotic breakdown, there's a part of me way, way in the back that's nothing's happening to that guy. That guy's up there just like watching. And so through meditation over the last 3 years, practicing it, I've gotten in touch with that part of myself and have grown it to where I can have feelings and take a step back from them, not be separated from the feelings, but aware of them with that kind of like, oh, you could go this way or you could go that way.
Right.
Which, as you know, has not been my MO.
No.
Not the usual Mantione MO.
Yeah.
I could go this way or that. Usually it's like, what the fuck?
What's that line in Behead Myself about being dragged that way again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Your feelings are just, well, you know, that's the thing they say in the rooms, you know, let go or get dragged.
Right.
We've both been dragged a lot. By our feelings.
Yeah. Feelings take control. A friend of mine says, I'm captured by my feelings.
Yeah.
Would be a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be the most scared I was. Never been anything like that again, thank God.
Yeah.
Sometimes in an airplane you can get it in a good case of turbulence.
Not a big fan of planes.
No.
But
Don't like not being in control. I can get through it now, though, even in unbelievably bad turbulence, because I can, you know, I'm like, all right, soldiers,
right? They're
doing this.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Every now and then I just, at some point, if the turbulence goes on long enough, I'll think, well, I've had a good run. You know?
I know. Right?
It's a good run.
It was good.
Yeah. I got 30-something episodes of my podcast up, so.
That's right.
You know, I'll leave a legacy and. Yeah,
a beautiful legacy, I should add. I do love listening to this podcast.
Well,
it's one of the great. It's a great way to become friends with you in a different way, without having to talk to you. I can.
You don't have me glowering at you from behind a drum set.
No, it's super appreciative.
Yeah. What is the thing in your life that you've lost that you regret losing the most?
So, there's the thing that happens to Catholics when you commit the ultimate mortal sin of wanting to kill yourself, that there's a pre-mic before that and there's a post-mic. And I would love to see the pre-mic a little more.
Yeah.
You know? Because, I mean, it's not fair to stigmatize the mentally ill with some banishment to hell for being in pain when life is so difficult.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember that you had a really strong connection with Daniel Johnston's work.
Yeah.
Because of his meditation almost constantly on damnation and loss.
That's right. Even Madeline, when she would write those songs, you know, but yeah, like the one that used to get me was "Don't Play Cards with Satan" because it sounds so stupid, but I knew exactly what he was talking about, and I was like, "That's right," because he'll deal you an awful hand. It's not good,
right?
But yeah, that's probably that kind of innocence. You wouldn't want to. You'd want to have that back.
Tell me about a time you received an act of kindness from a stranger.
This is the hardest one for me. So many acts. So many things. One of them that always comes back to me is this one guy, never met him before since, you know, just talked to me after a meeting one time, and I was busted, you know.
Yeah.
I was in that first year, and I was just super depressed.
Mm-hmm.
He just listened to me at the Wendy's.
The meeting after the meeting.
The meeting after the meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't. I never saw him again.
Was this
he
Long
spent
Island?
hours. No, this was down here.
Yeah.
This was down in Athens. One of the guys who was a stranger at that point, but became a good friend, was Jim Farrat.
Yeah.
He came into my life at one point early on when he was still managing Pylon and spent some time with me that really saved my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know those people that just came in and did stuff and you're just like, really?
Yeah.
I learned that maybe you don't have to spend a whole lot of time with somebody to give them a gift. Because I held on to those short, sometimes more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place to gig?
I love so many places to play that we get to play. It was really amazing when we opened with REM, and we got to play Berkeley. I went on stage and would do Weirdo, and because these were all like outdoor arenas.
Yeah.
But because they were carved out of the side of a mountain, they had incredible amphitheater acoustics.
Yeah.
So I could hit Weirdo in a way. It was like, wow, this is really fun. That was great. And then, but, the clubs that really get me going, like 529.
I love that place.
When we did that show at 529 a few years back.
When it was still a tiny room.
Yeah, and we were on the floor with everybody. It wasn't even a big crowd, but it was just like the visceral impact of being right there on the floor with 12 people can be such a rush.
I still love those gigs where you come to the bar and you're like, where are we going to play? Oh, we push the pool tables back at 5.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, okay. And I love those shows. I love touring with 5/8 or Pinky Doodle Poodle, or when I was in Powder Room, these like punk rock basement shows where I'd rather do that than a bus tour. It's hard to pay your mortgage, doing those van tours where you're playing at New York Pizza in Greensboro, North Carolina. But I just prefer that. Like, I feel like it's...
Well, you can really make a contact with the people that come out to see the music, and then you're all on the same level. Yeah. There isn't this like famous guy playing to your underling. There isn't that capitalistic commoditization of the product.
Right, it's not commodified.
No, it's a human experience.
Right.
You're doing the real thing, and the fan is just as important as the band,
without a doubt.
And so, because I was a fan way before I was ever a musician, right?
Yeah, same.
A passionate fan, and so to put somebody on a pedestal like that is unfair.
Yeah,
it's just patently
to
capitalistic.
Yeah.
No. Ta-da! We're the new Marxism. We're Marxism beat out of us. It's
right.
like, it's like
beaten into us.
Yeah, because it's so real.
Yeah.
When you see the definition of like owner versus laborer.
Yeah.
Boss versus, it's like.
I didn't expect to get radicalized in my 50s.
Right. But I have been.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
That's tough. I mean, I don't really think about life that way anymore. So I don't have a yearning to go anywhere. But I love New York. So there is a part of me that would like to go back because I am a little bit nostalgic.
What's the name of that? I guess it's the former like AT&T or Bell Telephone building in New York City where all the old artists live. It's like a big.
I don't know. I know nothing of this.
Oh man, there's a
I can't wait to. I'm going to be digging this up.
Yeah, no, it's
excellent.
Man,
well, we're going to Google this in a minute, folks. We'll get back to you.
I turned my phone off so I could do the interview, but like, there's a big artist community. It's not a colony because it's not outside the city. It's right there in the city, and all these like sculptors and painters and Guggenheim winners and stuff all live there.
This sounds like what I wanted to do instead of going to regular recovery meetings.
Right.
I don't want to go to those damn recovery meetings, but this sounds cool.
Yeah. Well,
if I could be an artist and an atheist and be sober, I'm in.
Yeah. No, and then you have the whole city around you. It's in Manhattan, So,
wow.
Yeah. All right. Do you have a perfect musical instrument? And if so, do you already own it?
No, I don't think about it that way. I used to. Like, I was always chasing the right guitar, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. And I never thought I had it until they would go away.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like, it was like when the Strat left, I was like...
The bowling ball Strat.
Yeah.
Swirl paint job, custom shop Strat.
Right. Where is it? Well, right now, the actual picture of it, you can go, if you look up bowling ball Strat on Reverb,
yeah,
that picture is my old Strat.
We traded that for a Gibson at Thoroughbred Music in Tampa. As I recall.
It was in.
We walked.
It was below Tampa. It was the one in
St. Pete.
Yeah, no. In between Tampa and Gainesville. What was that music store?
Oh, that was a different music store though.
It wasn't Thoroughbred. It was that, and that dude wound up with it in Augusta for a little while. He had it. He bought it. Yeah.
No kidding.
But it is wound up as the representative bowling ball Strat in Reverb, and Demese wrote them a letter trying to find out who has it.
Right.
Because it's like museum quality now, except
it had duct tape on when we had it. It was filthy.
You can see the duct tape scar on the top.
Duct tape residue.
Yes, you can see it. It's it's amazing. But anyway, that guitar. Obviously the one that got stolen was the Gold Top was.
Well, that's the next question is, and I think I know the answer is there a guitar or other instrument that you've lost either from theft or pawning it or having to sell it that you wish you could get back?
Well, both of those guitars. So the bowling ball I wish I could get back, and the Gold Top.
It's a 72 Les Paul.
72 cracked headstock Les Paul.
Got it from Guthrie's, right? From
and
Mike Guthrie.
It had the mini humbuckers.
Yeah.
So it had a little with the 50-watt Marshall head.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been a better sound.
Somebody just walked off the. You guys went.
We played Savannah with Super Jag.
Right.
And at the end of the night, Rizzy was in the band. We were playing with Super Jag, and at the end of the night, I thought they had grabbed it. And they were like, no, we didn't get your guitar. I said, are you sure? Double check. And they said, no. And I was like, it had walked out of the club.
Yeah.
And they had said that there was people that would walk into the club at the end of the night, wait, and then just go in and out the back door.
Into that alley.
And it was gone forever. Never saw it again.
Motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well, I had so many great amps and stuff stolen, but I did steal. So...
You think it's just the wheel of karma turning?
As they say in the Buddhist.
Yeah.
You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
It was,
So the other night when we were coming back from Charlotte, North Carolina, the night that you fell and hurt yourself playing a guitar solo on the bar.
Yes.
Dan and I were in the front seat and somewhere south, I think we were maybe on 441 at this point.
Right.
I saw a light in the sky that for a second I thought was a UFO. And you know me, I'm not a big paranormal guy. I don't really believe in UFOs. But for a second I was like, holy shit, what is that? And I said to Dan, what is that? And he was like, I don't know. Cause he couldn't. And like for a minute there, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to see a UFO with Dan. And I thought, well, if I'm going to see it with anybody, I think Dan is my guy. I don't want to see it with Dan. And of course, it turned out to be a cell phone tower.
Yeah. I don't really think that's a UFO.
No, he didn't say it. He just I don't know what that is because it was foggy and it was a really weird color blue that you don't expect. So the question is, if you were going to see a UFO with somebody in the car, who would you want it to be?
Well, that's so great. I mean, if it's only one guy, it's Sean or Zabornik.
Sean Dunn from 5'8" would have a good camera.
Yes, you'd want him to do it. I'd want it to be.
But I don't know if he could handle it. Like, could Sean handle a UFO? Sean is a very well-adjusted, smart guy who's got a grip on things until he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, he would at least be a checkpoint.
Yeah.
Zabornik would be good.
Well, because Sean wouldn't go there immediately.
Right.
He'd be like, it's got to be a rational
That's right.
explanation for this, up to the point where, like, yeah.
And then, Kelly would be good because she would at least have the rational explanation.
She's a scientist.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd have, but like, man, if it wasn't the three of those people, but I'd be in a lot of trouble, I think, because I'm usually the one that's following the UFO.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was the one, like, I'll join the pyramid.
The
cult.
Man, I remember there was a time when, like, we were all so broke and you kept taking the hook on these, like, pyramid schemes. Like Herbalife thing or Herbalife, however it's pronounced. Like,
well, I was on the Herbalife Bowling League in 1988. So you tell me.
Ugh.
I didn't even.
But your dad kind of kept doing the.
Yeah, no, he had the Amway.
No.
I have his old Amway pots in the kitchen now. I cook with them.
Wow, maybe they weren't garbage then.
No, they were great pots. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
These pots are great, Patrick. What kind of pots do you? I saw you had cast iron.
Yeah.
This is better than cast iron.
Yeah, nothing's better than cast iron. So if you could imagine a taxi, this is the last question. Imagine a taxi to go anywhere in time or space, and it could take you where you told it to, and you said to the driver, "Hey man, take me home. Where is home?"
It's court.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's easy because that's where the heart is.
Yeah.
It's been Hub Central for
How long you guys been there?
Since 2008.
And that's where we practice.
Yeah, it's where the Bad Ends practices.
Yeah.
That's where the kids practice and write all their music. That's where the piano lives. That's where the love happens. That's where the sitting room is.
Yeah.
That's where I watch the seasons.
Yeah.
We all. I know we all feel this way because we've talked about it many times on our drives, but we're very grateful for where we are now.
Oh God, yeah.
And that's a kind of mental health that you just can't.
Yeah.
It can't be overstated. Yeah. There's no way to. I don't even know how to. I mean, yeah, the taxi. If it didn't go there, it would be like you'd be that scene from It's a Wonderful Life where he's like not getting home in the taxi cab, and he's like,
right.
What the
Potterville?
Potterville. Yeah, it's a Pottersville. That's
right. Evil Mr. Potter, right? That movie's got you don't really until you hit a point in your life where we've kind of hit where you become somewhat radicalized. You don't really realize how deep the anti-capitalist message of that film is,
and how
people are like, I hate It's a Wonderful Life. I'm like, well, comrade, let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, why is that?
Right, but man, this has been amazing. I'm really grateful you're able to do this.
I was driving over here, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was a little apprehensive because so many skeletons I just don't want to go see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
but I wanted to make it clear that, there's a way to find your way through the worst of mental illness to the best of mental health. And I encourage people to, any way they can.
Yeah.
The relentlessness at which me and you have just kept at it. It might not happen overnight, but there's the hope that people like old fogies like us can give people.
Maybe finally be happy.
I mean, we are.
Yeah.
And we didn't come from that place.
No.
We did not come from Happyville.
No.
No.
Well, man, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Love you so much.
It goes both ways. I love that you're doing this.
Thanks, man. All right. Well, that seemed like a lot, man. You wouldn't believe the stories we left out. 30 years we've been doing this together. We've got some wild stories. Come see our show at the Caledonia on October 26th, and we'll tell you some of them. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your continued support. Remember, T-shirts are available along with the espresso on the website, crashandridepodcast.com. As I'm recording this, it's 12:03 on Saturday night, or Sunday morning, actually. This is the latest I've ever finished the podcast, but I've just been wiped out from that tour, and I'm just finishing this up now. So, yeah, if you're furiously hitting the refresh button where the hell's the podcast, it'll be there in a minute. Just cool out, man. Remember, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression, you need someone to talk to. If you're contemplating self-harm, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you're a trans person struggling with anxiety and depression or gender dysphoria and you need to talk to a peer, call the Trans Lifeline's peer support line at 1-877-565-8860 or go to translifeline.org. thanks once again to our erstwhile producer, Jake Kreger. He was the first guest on the podcast, and he gives me show notes every week. If the show is any better, it's thanks to Jake. Thanks also to Gene Wolfolk and the Powder Room. They provide all of the music for the show. The intro, the bumper in the middle, and the outro are all songs from the Powder Room's record Curtains. If you want to hear more, you can always go to thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. That's THEPOWDERROOM.bandcamp.com. The album Curtains is there. The album that I played on, Lucky, is there. There's a couple of other records there you could check out. They're an amazing band. They're good friends of mine, and I love them very much. Thanks to Heil Microphones for these excellent PR40 microphones that I use for the podcast. They gave me a good deal on them, and I'm so grateful. These are great mics, and I'd recommend them to anyone doing a podcast. Thanks to Jittery Joe's, and thanks to Greer Amplification for your continued support. Thanks for Hendershots for being an amazing coffee shop, and thanks to Nucci Space for saving so many lives. Okay, until we speak again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music. Support your favorite band, and remember, loud guitars save lives.
Yeah.